Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Girl Power Happy Hour. Today I'm joined by Dr. Deborah Price. She's a nephrologist with the Nephrology Associates of Northeast Florida. So grab your coffee or your cocktail and sit down, and I hope you find this as inspiring as I do. So I just have to tell you up front that I'm very excited to have you here, and I want to speak to you about kind of your background. Right now, you're working with the Associates of, tell me again.
Nephrology Associates of Northeast Florida.
Nephrology. It just even say it is going to take me a lot of time to practice. So for the lay person, explain what nephrology is.
Nephrology is the study of kidney diseases. So our job is to try to keep people off of dialysis or needing a transplant, but unfortunately sometimes things don't go that way. And, we have our dialysis patients and the transplant patients we follow up.
And what usually contributes to the need for kidney treatments? Is it usually hereditary? Are there things that people can do to prevent, having to go that way?
Most common cause in this country is diabetes, and high blood pressure is a close second.
Oh, okay.
And I find here in this area, it's at a younger age than what it is, say, in the Northeast. And that could be because of health habits or not having good habits.
Is it because of shrimp and grits?
Well,
Is that what it is?
I believe that the diet probably isn't that great. The salt, the fat, the sugar.
All the good
all
food.
all the comfort foods, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so I want to talk about how in the world you got to this position, how it started. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C.
Oh,
Place called Landover.
gosh, Northeast. I guess you're sort of.
I don't know. I always thought I was in the South, but there are people who tell me I'm not Southern.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so how many siblings do you have?
2 sisters. One is 3 years older, one 3 years younger. So I was a middle child.
Oh, gosh. And are they also in the medical field?
No, I'm the only one. My older sister's a chemist, and my younger sister's a hairdresser.
Wow. Now, your parents are still married.
Yes, they're still married. They're getting ready to have their anniversary in 2 days. I think 68 years.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
isn't it? And you've been married for quite a while.
35.
Wow. So you were growing up, and your father has a scientific background, correct?
Right. He was a chemist.
And your mom, what did she do?
She was a nurse, and then after we were sort of maybe in elementary school, she stopped working. And then as we went to high school, she went back to school and became an elementary school teacher.
Oh my gosh. It's so exciting. So, not to speak about your age, but you were born in the 60s.
I'm a 60s child.
Yeah. And you grew up in a time where there was a lot of upheaval in the country. Not that there hasn't been forever. I mean, it's always been difficult for minorities in our country. But in the 60s, there was a real movement for change. And so you grew up witnessing and experiencing this real push towards civil rights. So did you see that in, say, high school before you started college? Did you see or feel the tensions of the country as they're coming out of this big, not even a revolution, I don't know how you can explain it, but coming out of the civil rights initial movement into your high school years, did you see any impact on your life personally as you're going through those years?
I guess I first noticed it when I was in, I guess, what is middle school now. We called it junior high school back then. And because that's when busing took place in Maryland. And it was pretty ugly. People yelled and screamed, and we were the ones who were being bused into a pretty much blue collar white neighborhood, and they didn't want us there, and we really didn't want to be there. But so it was for the first few years, it was nasty. Yeah.
Yeah. And did your sisters and you go to the same school at least? Were you bused together going to the same school, or were there age variations so that you had one that was being bused to elementary while you and your sister kind of together? How did that work out?
Well, because we were 3 years apart,
Mm.
my sister was in high school and she was able to stay at the same high school. But it was just me really who was bused to another place. And my younger sister was still in elementary school and she went to the local elementary school that we all went to.
Yeah,
So,
and you said your local schools were really good,
yeah.
really solid and
Mhm.
strong academically.
Yeah.
And then you were bused to an area that was a little more challenging personally and academically to like
Hmm.
make it fit.
I don't know. I think in middle school, I would say the ratio to black white was something like 30, 70, 70% Caucasian. And the schools were pretty okay. I didn't at that time have anything to compare it to.
Hmm.
And then when we were, I would call us a middle class neighborhood.
Hmm.
We were bused to a blue collar, maybe lower middle class neighborhood. And I can't say the schools were bad, but and I don't know that they were any better, but things were different because I was in some of the top math groups. And when I came there, they would say, "Oh, I don't know that you should be here." And, they were very condescending to me. So that's when I first noticed the difference, racially.
Right. So let's talk about the wonderful things that your parents did
Hmm.
that instilled in you and your sisters this understanding that you can achieve so much. Um, I didn't have that. Like I'm a child of the 60s as well. And I was I was told basically the education would be wasted on me because I would just end up getting married anyway.
Mm.
So there was a shift in women's rights and there was a shift in equal rights for minorities. And so what did your parents do that really gave you the courage to say, I'm gonna aim for the stars. I'm going to be everything that I want to be.
Mhm. Well, I guess it probably started with my father, who wanted to have nothing but boys. And when he had nothing but girls, I guess he realized he had to prepare them, for life. And so he always, probably more so than my mother, instilled in us, you can do whatever you want to do, whatever it is, just make sure it's legal. Um, so
Good advice. Yeah.
he never really pushed us to do anything. We had an idea and he said, yes, you can do it. I remember when I was in high school, I told him I wanted to be a doctor. So he said, oh, well, that's good. And I said, but my guidance counselor told me not to be a doctor because that was too hard and maybe I should be a nurse. And he said, don't listen to that. If you
Wow.
want to be a doctor, you go and be a doctor.
I love that.
So.
I love that. Um, and we see men really stepping into parenting roles in this newer generation in ways that we didn't necessarily see in generations past. Um, so you have a daughter
I do.
who is going into the medical field,
Hmm.
and how do you think it differs for her now as she's going into her classes, and what are the differences that you really notice?
Well, the big difference is the gender ratio. When I went in, this is back in 1982, not to say my age, but I want to think we had a class of about 170, and probably 30, 40 of them were women, the rest were men. My daughter's class, she's a freshman. She has 148 and 101 are women. So she's like, Mom, where are all the men? So it's a, you know, flip.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's an incredible transition.
Mhm.
Um, and we also have women that are juggling all these things. So as they go into all these fields now, these professional fields, and they're working, most women work full time now. My mom stayed home with us most of our lives to see this transition where they then have to take care of their kids and their families and all of that. As you ventured into that realm yourself professionally, you had to juggle all these things. Did you find that difficult at all?
Oh, yes, I felt like a single parent. I mean, I had a husband and I love him dearly, but he grew up in the Caribbean, in Barbados. And I would say maybe socially, culturally, they may be 50 years behind us. So when he grew up, women were either a mother or a nurse or a teacher, but not a combination of either. So it
Wow.
was either one or the other. So he comes to the United States, he meets me, and he says, "Oh yeah, you have your career, I have my career." And then when we have kids, we'll just bring somebody from the Caribbean and they'll take care of the kid and, like a little nanny, and we'll keep going. So when the kid popped out and after 3 months, I was ready to go back to work. He's like, "Really? Are you going to go back to work? I thought once you saw the kid, you would want to just stay home." And I was like, that wasn't the plan.
Uh-huh.
I like what I do, so I wanted to. Yes, I love my kids, but I also wanted to do, my career. So I did. So a lot of the childcare did fall on me, and I think this is just how he saw it because this is how he grew up. His mother would stay at home. So, when the kid got sick, I would wake up in the morning, oh, so and so has a fever, 101, he can't go to preschool. And my husband would kiss me and say, "Well, I'll see you later. I know you'll figure it out because you're a smart woman." So I always had to have plan A, B, C, and D, you know,
Hmm.
because of that. So yeah, a lot of the child care did fall on me.
Yeah, and so now I look at these women today with these different roles, and there still is this bit of transition, I think.
Hmm.
I would say I see a lot of millennial women still carrying kind of everything.
Hmm.
And the husbands do help out, but it's often considered helping her
Hmm.
instead of just being a parent. It's like
Right.
I'm helping her, I'll change a diaper here or there, and now hopefully we're moving to this place where men and women really see it as an equal partnership
Hmm.
in creating these young lives.
Yeah.
But uh, do you have any advice you think for your daughter's generation? What would you say to her? How would you help her navigate that? Because there's a good chance that she'll be married and she'll have children and a career. How do you think, because you did what you did and you carried that weight
Hmm.
and you just kind of sucked it up and did what you had to do, how do you think you'll advise her?
Oh, I don't know.
Hmm.
I guess look at your mate very carefully. And I always say, look at how he treats his mother, because it kind of gives you a clue as how he would also treat you. And somebody that respects you and respects what you do, you know, and hopefully it will work out. I see some couples now that are stay-at-home dads, and the wife goes out and works. And
Mm-hmm.
my husband always says, "Well, if you made more money than I did, because I'm part-time,
Mm-hmm.
I would be glad to stay home with the kids." And I'm like, "Yeah, right."
Yeah. We know. We know.
But yeah, I would just tell her to be careful, but you never know, because when you get married, sometimes things change.
Yeah.
So,
People change,
people change. So.
good and bad.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about those initial years. You're in high school and you're going to make the transition to college and you're considering different schools. What direction does that take you in out of high school?
Hmm. So I was looking at colleges that had a high rate of kids getting into medical school because that's what I wanted to do. So I was looking all over pretty much the Northeast. And then my dad said to me, "Well, He was a college professor. He said, if you go to school here, you wouldn't have to pay anything. He wouldn't have to pay anything. He said, and then I would pay for your medical school. So I
Wow.
said, okay. So I went. So he was at Howard University in Washington, D.C. So that's where I went for undergrad. It's a historically black college and university, HBCU.
Wow. And I think I've seen some of those women from the school having reunions at Sawgrass Marriott.
Really?
I think so. But it, maybe not. But I think I recall several years back, and it was so inspiring to see a sea of women,
Mm-hmm.
a sea of women who had gone on with their professional careers in a generation where it wasn't typical. And it's very inspiring. So you go to Howard and things are going well. Did you make good grades? Did you stay focused on academics? There wasn't a lot of other focus there, was there?
Oh, it's a party school, like any college. So, it was fun. If I had to do it again, I would go back there. I love the school. I didn't want to go there at first because I felt like I grew up there, because I was always going on campus with my dad. And I took music lessons there from the fine arts school.
Really?
So, I felt like I wanted to go someplace else. But when he gave me that, choice, I said, okay, I'll come to Howard. But it was good. And I believe I got a good education. I was able to get a lot of good summer jobs. My dad advised me to be a chemistry major as opposed to a biology major. Everybody's a biology major who wanted to go to medical school. He said, because you could probably get really good jobs during the summer. And if you didn't get into medical school, you probably could go and work as a chemist for a year until you reapplied. So that's what I did.
Wow. So when you're transitioning then from Howard
hmm
to medical school, how did you make that decision and where did you find your footing there?
Well, at that time, I didn't really care where I went. I just wanted to go somewhere to get into a medical school. And I don't know what the statistics were at that time, how many kids get into medical school.
Right.
Whereas my daughter now, well, she knows all of these numbers. She says for every medical school student, they only get into one school. No matter, and most will apply to like 25 schools. And I'm like, wow, because I think I applied to maybe 5, 7, and I got into 2, so I went to New Jersey. And I think I picked New Jersey because I didn't want to go that far from home, and I had relatives who lived in New Jersey. So I figured that would be a support system for me, and it was.
Mm-hmm. How challenging did you find it going through the program?
Yeah. Well, the first 2 years, at least in my day, first 2 years were pretty much didactic. You sat in a, lecture hall, and it was just a whole bunch of, memory work. It wasn't hard. It's just a lot of it. So my day, the lecture started at 9, they ended at 5. I get up, go to class all day, come home, I would eat something, and I would study for like 4 or 5 hours and go to bed. And that's all I did for those first 2 years.
Wow. So, what were you think the ratios between men and women when you were in medical school? Were you a rarity? I mean, were there like 10% women? What do you think?
There were probably 30% women at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you feel any pushback, like from the staff or anything toward women in that role or pursuing that role? Did it seem misogynistic at all in that time period?
Well, most of our professors were men at that time. Um, and I probably noticed it when I was going into my third year because third year is clinical.
Mm.
So, when some of my classmates, female classmates, said, I want to be a surgeon, it's like, oh, I don't know if you want to be a surgeon. You want to get married and have kids. You want to, be at home, not so stressful. Maybe you want to do pediatrics, or maybe you want to do internal medicine, family medicine, have more of a 9 to 5. So I did see women being pushed more so. And I remember distinctly there was a woman who wanted to be a cardiologist. And during her interview, they told her it was very sort of degrading. They said, well, you're a woman. We don't want any women in this program or something like that. And she turned around and sued them and was able to get into the program, because of that. They were very, you know, telling her that we don't want you because you're a woman, because you'll get married, you'll have kids, you'll get pregnant, and, on and
Right.
on and on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So as you were going into, say, internship and you're moving from school practicum to practical work, where did you land in order to accomplish those things?
Well, I stayed in New Jersey to do my internal medicine. And that was a hard time. I mean, I thought medical school was bad, with the hours. But I mean, we worked over 100 hours, chronically tired. And I think the thing that bothered me the most is, when you're on call, you do have a place that you can go to a room to rest, for
Right.
a couple of hours maybe. But there were no facilities for women. So I had to stay in the room with my resident, who was a male most of the time, so that was kind of uncomfortable. And the first one ended up being my husband, so he said that was a good thing for me.
Love was in the air. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's incredible. So when you got through with your internship, where did you go from there?
Well, I had wanted to do research. I had thought about doing research, so I did a sort of research fellowship in New York. So I didn't live in New York. I just commuted because I was in North Jersey. So I would just commute over, and I did that. That was good. I like that.
Mm.
So.
So what brought you to other areas? Where did you have your first um, practice? Where did you start
Mm.
really diving into the field?
Well, I got married, and then when we got married, my husband wanted to go to Massachusetts to do a fellowship. So we ended up moving to Massachusetts, which actually that's where I was born, but I only lived there for about a year. So he worked in a UMass Medical Center in Worcester, and I was able to find a job in Boston at Brigham and Women's. And I first did a high blood pressure hypertension fellowship, and then got on staff there.
And working specifically with women's medical care?
No, no, as nephrologist,
Okay.
doing high blood pressure.
For
Like,
everyone.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
For adults, yeah,
Okay.
but not specifically for women. It was for everyone.
That's good.
Yeah.
And do you think that during that time when you were starting your practice and you did have male patients, were any of them like surprised? Did you get that? Did you ever feel like men were shocked or surprised when a woman walked in to do their treatment?
Actually, I noticed it more here when I moved south. There was one elderly patient that I had. His doctor had left town, so I was taking all the patients because I was fairly new. And he reminded me of my grandfather. He was probably in his 80s, mid 80s, African American. And when they told him that Dr. Price was a woman, I heard him at the reception at the check-in area saying, I don't want a woman. I've never had a woman doctor. How can you all give this to me? And what do you, I thought you all liked me. And he was just going on and on and on. So when they put him in the room and I walked in, he was looking at me like very suspiciously. And, so we just started talking and at the end, we became best friends,
Oh gosh.
So, and he said to me, he's passed on. Before he died, he said, if I had the choice again, I'd always have a woman doctor.
Oh,
Yeah. And actually, a lot of my male patients do tell me that. And I don't know if it's because maybe we listen a little bit more,
a little bit.
or
Mm,
maybe we're a little bit more compassionate.
a little bit. Yeah. Oh gosh. I find it so inspiring to think that, you overcame the obstacles that females face, that you overcame the obstacles that minorities face in our country, and you just kind of rested in it. I can't help but think that your parents were probably just key instrumentally in that.
Yes.
So we have a generation of girls that didn't have that support through their community or through parentage. Have you ever had the opportunity to speak to or work with or encourage girls that maybe didn't come from that really super blessed like background that you had?
Yes, I've been fortunate enough to do that. I usually like to start with young children,
Mhm.
because I think to instill in them, something at a young age is better than doing it at high school, although I've done that. So I currently volunteer with Malve Washington Foundation as a tutor, and I do that 1 day a week. And they give me girls usually.
Oh, that's
So
really
that's good.
great.
Try to be a role model, not to have them become a doctor, but just to let them know they can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, just to encourage them that someone's there supporting them too,
Mhm.
believing in them. Do you see that when you do work with young women, the little girls and a little bit older, do you think that there's still an issue with self-esteem in the classroom, and feeling like they can do anything that they want to do?
Oh yeah, yeah. When we're trying to do their work, and sometimes I think they try to play this card like I'm so stupid, I don't know this, I'll never know it because I'm dumb. They tell me that a lot, and sometimes I think they're saying that more just to get out of doing the work,
Hmm.
But they believe they have self-esteem issues, and they say, well, I'm getting a D, and I'm like, yeah, but we want to do the best that we can. And when they say to me, well, my mother said, at least I'm passing, you know, I don't want to go against what the parent says, but I just say, you can try to do a little bit better though, and I've seen the grades come up, and I think they feel much better about themselves that they can do it.
Hmm.
I remember an instance when I was a resident, we had to work in clinic, and this was on a Saturday. And there was a young girl who came in. She was probably 18 or 19. So I came in, as a doctor, and I said, hello, how are you? And she looked at me and she said, I'm waiting for the doctor. So I said, yes, yes, I am the doctor.
Aw.
And she said, no, I'm waiting for the doctor. And then I realized, because she was a young African American girl, I realized that she couldn't see me as a doctor
Mm.
because she could never see herself as one, you know, things like that kind of bothered me.
Yeah, it's amazing. Um, so as we're going through these transitional periods where women are starting to unload some of the burdens that they're carrying the weight of the world, the children, planning the activities, often handling with the bills and the family finances, the shopping, just a whole lot of stuff, and trying to figure out that balance with a spouse. Um, have you noticed a significant change in that direction? You work with a lot of young professionals now
Hmm.
in your field. Do you think that we as women that we're doing it any better? Are we moving forward, or do you think we're just doing it all?
Well, I look at some of the men in my practice, and I think they have become more supportive of women because they have daughters.
Yeah.
And I remember we were at a medical meeting, and an older doctor was very upset because his daughter was one of the speakers, on the podium, and there were two other doctors. She was the only female. They introduced everyone as a doctor. They introduced her as Miss So and so. Oh, he
Mm.
was livid. And I said, well, things like that have happened. And I think when men see and they want good for their daughters, I think they kind of change a little bit, and be more supportive. I look at some of the younger males in our practice, and they're more involved than what my husband was. I mean, doing things, and, he says, oh, we got to split the work, to make things work.
Hmm.
So I think that's a good thing, a positive thing. So
We're moving.
we're moving.
We're making movement.
We are. We're
Yeah.
making some movement.
Yeah. Okay. And so you also have the vantage point of a minority. Do you see progress there? You started in the field in circa
Hmm.
1982-ish. Have you seen progress in that area? Are we moving forward in this country in having equal rights and people being respected for their humanness and their abilities?
Well, for women, I think it has improved a lot, as I mentioned before. But when I look at, say, black male physicians, it was probably about 3%, before the women's rights movement, before civil rights, it was about 3%. And it's still 3%.
Wow.
So that has not changed. There may be more women who are minorities as well in medicine, but not for the black male.
What do we do? We have to start when they're young,
You
right?
have to
We
start when they're
gotta,
young and try
right.
to instill like things like STEM programs, to encourage them. But then there are also financial issues. I mean, it's very expensive. Just going to college, people tell me, that they're $200,000 in debt, and then you put on top of that medical school. I mean, most schools are like 50 to $70,000 a year just for tuition.
And just the demands of that. I see a lot
Yeah.
of minority men, carrying the weight of helping their family,
Hmm.
their extended family financially. So if they're doing that, they've oftentimes got to go out and figure out a way early on to bring in an income that will help support
Yeah.
a lot of people who need help. Um, so I think we've got to revamp how we're doing things in our education system in this country, and I think that goes back to going back to that young age. So are you familiar with any programs where people are reaching into our younger generation and trying to help them early on?
Any programs?
Yeah.
I don't know. I always think of things like the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, because they start so young and they do a variety of things, not just, um, going out hunting and whatnot, but, they help build morale and self-esteem as well, because I think s- kids need to know that they can do it too,
Hmm.
you know, and I think many lack self-esteem. Um, there are programs around Head Start, giving a kid, what some may learn at home, but others may not, or what preschool may teach them. Those programs I think, have been shown to be helpful. Um, After school program, yeah. But
Yeah.
also people giving back, people saying, I had a rough time. Let me see if I can mentor someone, and they have the big brother, big sister programs.
Hmm. Or those who didn't have such a rough time, but like had such a wonderful family that encouraged them,
Yeah.
being able to like come from that vantage point of being able to encourage young people. And you are doing it mostly with the young girls. Um, and so I think as we get more men who are feeling really good about who they are, they can go back into those areas as well and try and encourage young boys. Not that women can't encourage young boys too, but boys really like hanging out with other boys and men.
Yeah.
They really do. And I think that's true of women as well.
Hmm.
Young girls like to hang out with women and learn from women.
Yeah.
But now um, we have a generation too that is openly not categorizing themselves by male or female. So really it's just about encouraging all children
Right.
to be all that they can be, no matter what.
Mhm.
Were there any instances where you weren't sure that you could achieve all that you hoped?
Sure. Yes. When I was trying to apply to medical school, I mean, it was so competitive. I had no idea that I would get in. I was praying, please God, just let me get into one, So yeah, that was very stressful time of my life. You know.
And so how'd you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out? What happened? What happened inside that you were able to go forward?
Well, I guess I was fortunate that I had some boots, because not everybody does. And, my parents just said, you can do it. You're a good student, you've done well. I've tried to do a few extracurricular activities, but, it wasn't like I opened a nonprofit, which it seems like kids have to do now today to get into
Oh,
just undergraduate,
oh yeah.
but it was competitive. So, I just had to keep faith that, it would happen, and it did. So I was very grateful.
Well, and speaking of extracurriculars, you did throw out a little nugget there about music.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about that. What did you take on? Were you taking piano lessons,
Yeah.
classically trained? What did you do?
Yeah, I did piano. So it was classical piano. And actually, when I was a undergrad, I was a chemistry major, math minor, and music minor. So I did minor in music. So, and a piano does sit in my house. And, I keep saying when I, have more time, I'm going to get back to that. I haven't gotten to that day yet, but, I do want to start playing the piano a little bit more.
Now you have a son, he's your oldest,
Yeah.
right? And then you have a daughter. And did you have them practice music? Did you have them take music lessons?
I did. I did. But they did not like it.
It didn't stick.
It did not stick. I mean, my parents started me when I was about 5, and I did it all the way through and then into college. But my kids were not interested.
Well, and they say that people who have that ability musically do well mathematically also. Did you find that to be true? Do you think there's a correlation between piano and learning that skill and reading those notes and applying that toward mathematics?
Oh, maybe. I mean, I really like math. I did math, all the way up to differential equations. And it was very easy for me. So when I started memorizing stuff, that was hard. I had to really change my focus from sort of analytical type thinking to just rote memory,
Mm.
you know. So,
Yeah, and I think that if a child learns to read very well,
hmm
the sky's the limit.
oh,
Like as long as they can master reading well, they can teach themselves just about anything.
yeah, that's true.
So, I guess even if math isn't as easy for some, as long as they can teach themselves and they can think along those lines, they could always learn.
hmm
Yeah.
Yes.
So when's the last time that you actually performed, that you sat down and shared with your family, friends, or anyone your ability?
Oh gosh, that would, let me see. I moved here maybe about 18 years ago. So maybe about 18 years ago.
No, really?
And I keep passing it every day.
You have that skill set
And
and
I was
you're
just
not
looking,
doing it.
I know, and I was looking at that piano yesterday and I said I should just sit down because, there's so many other things to do. To just sit down, that would be it's always very relaxing to do that.
I mean, it would be kind of fun and shocking to start playing some Christmas carols for
Mm,
your family over Christmas and have them sing with you.
maybe.
They would probably be so surprised. Or for New Year's, like bringing out little
hmm
old lang syne on the piano for a little gathering.
I might try that.
That would be so fun. You know, I've always envied those with musical ability. I play guitar, but I don't
hmm
play piano, and I just think it's absolutely wonderful when people can do that. So,
Yes, I think you've inspired me to do that because, I was just thinking today, um, if I had to do things over again, I would still want to be a doctor, but I think I would take more time for myself, you know.
yeah.
I would be more physically active in the earlier years, and I would probably take more time to do things like
Um,
play the piano, and enjoy life a little bit more because life is very short and we put a lot of stresses on ourselves.
yeah.
So,
And I see a lot of people take their talent to retirement facilities and play for them, play for our seniors who can't get out and about.
Mm.
And the senior generation just loves to hear
Yeah.
the music. And so there's certainly some opportunities for you with your talent.
I have to, yeah, warm up a little bit more.
So if you could give any advice
Hmm.
to a young woman who's considering going out into the world, overcoming some obstacles to achieve her dreams, what do you think you would want to really, really say to a young woman?
Mm. Well, if you have a dream, go get it, you know? And don't listen to the naysayers, because there are a lot of them out there
Mhm.
who say you can't do this, you can't do that. And unfortunately, some of them are our family members. Some of them are our good friends or who we thought were our friends. And some are just people who are jealous of us for whatever reason, but don't listen to those people, to stay positive, stay focused on what you want and go get it.
Wow. I'm so grateful for you sharing your story with us. And I think that it's going to be a really positive message for young women who just are kind of unsure about, can they do it all? Can they achieve what
Mhm.
they set their hearts to? So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.